This is a production of PBS Charlotte.
It's a way of life once romanticized in classic movies.
He was a wealthy merchant and planter.
But it's a way of life that nearly destroyed the nation.
There was a darker side.
And at historic Latta Plantation, the staff works diligently to make history come to life, educating visitors about all aspects of life on a plantation.
We try to tell raw stories on the plantation here. If we didn't talk about it, we would not be doing our jobs.
For some staff, it's personal.
I am their voice. Definitely, you better believe it, and that's why I do this.
Understanding Latta's history includes the structures of life here. The homes, kitchen, barns, and the recreated slave cabin help share the site's story. But it's not just the buildings. There are animals here to tell of life back then.
I think the animals really bring life to the place.
And just like they did 200 years ago, the animals take a lot of care.
We could not have animals if we did not have a farm manager.
Join us as we bring you the history behind Latta Plantation. Witness Civil War combat right here in Charlotte. Meet the staff and interpreters dedicated to accurately sharing the history. And meet the man who helps to make the history lessons come to life with these animals on the plantation. That's all coming up on A Trail of History. Two sides, locked in a fierce combat. Rifles fired as fast as they can be loaded. A cannon's boom in the distance. And the air fills with smoke. Lucky for the spectators, this battle isn't real, but it gives them a glimpse into a tragic time in history, the American Civil War. It's the closest we'll see to what it might have been like then, our front row seat to the Civil War. Historic reenactments like this draw a crowd to historic Latta Plantation. The annual Civil War weekend, held each June, brings history to life. There's music, cooking, demonstrations, reenactments, cannon demonstrations, tours of the buildings, and activities for kids.
This is going to be a little tricky.
Across the plantation, Michael Webb dons the uniform of a Union soldier and puts several of the younger visitors through their military paces.
Nice.
Teaching them how to come to attention and how to march as if they were part of the Union Army during the Civil War.
Right face!
Members of the Palmetto Battalion Artillery brought in their big gun for the event, so we can all see in person what warfare was like back then.
Fire! That is a 3-inch, 10-pound Parrott rifle. It's a 3-inch round, 3-inch in diameter, and the rounds weigh 10 pounds. It has a range about 1.5 miles. There's a rifled cannon. That means it spirals, kind of like throwing a football. Prepare! Fire!
Matthew All holds the rank of Sergeant Major and says there's a bit of fun in what his group does.
It's great. From the kids going wild to the older adults, it's usually a great feeling.
But there's much more to it than that. To see this up close is to know what it might have been like all those years ago.
Not only showing the guns, but showing history as a whole. Because if we don't learn from the mistakes of the past, we're destined to repeat them and to educate the public. What actually happened on these fields. Not just what they read in the books, but they actually come out and experience it. They see it, they feel our uniforms. They see what they're learning in the history books. It brings it to life.
Today, these reenactments offer a vibrant and immersive look at a piece of America's story. But the story of historic Latta Plantation connects Mecklenburg County to the rest of the world. From the windows on the house on the hill, James Latta could look out across his land and the small empire he built here in northern Mecklenburg County. But what brought the 18th century Irishman to the Carolina backcountry in the first place? Well, following the paths of those who came before him, of course.
The early European settlers that came to the Piedmont, North Carolina area were two groups of people. There were Germans and there were the Scots-Irish Presbyterians. Mecklenburg County was settled almost entirely by the Scots-Irish Presbyterians. Every county surrounding us is kind of half and half.
James Latta's father and brother are believed to be part of the Scots-Irish migration who settled in nearby Rowan County. In 1785, just 2 years after the American Revolution, it was James's turn to make the journey from his native Ireland to North Carolina. But there would be no family reunion for the Lattas. Both his father and brother had passed away, and James Latta came to Rowan County to settle their estates. Local historian Ann Williams believes at first Latta planned to return to Ireland once those estates were settled.
He left behind his wife and 2 young boys. Probably he didn't plan to stay here for so long, but sometimes settling estates can go on for a very long time, and that may have been the case here. We don't know for sure, but he had been here about 6 years when his wife passed away, and then shortly after that, his 2 young sons joined him here.
With the loss of his first wife, James Latta decided to build a new life here in America.
He ended up becoming a merchant, traveling to Philadelphia, other points north, and probably also to Charleston, and bought goods, brought them here to the backcountry to sell.
In 1796, Latta married a second time, a young Lincoln County native named Jane Knox. Together, they had 4 children.
The family was very much involved at Hopewell Presbyterian Church. Jane was said to be especially a deeply religious woman.
With a growing family and expanding wealth from his merchant business, James Latta purchased this land near present-day Huntersville. It didn't take long for work to start on the main house.
This house was built, we believe, in 1800. He purchased the land from Moses Hayes in 1799, and we date the house circa 1800. Oftentimes it took longer than a year to finish a house, so we're not sure exactly when they moved in. This house is supposedly on the Philadelphia townhouse plan. We believe because Latta did a lot of buying for his merchant business in Philadelphia that he liked the looks of the houses there. It's a hall and parlor plan. You can see the hall from the front door all the way to the back door going straight through the house. Lots of windows in this house.
Inside the home, the signs of Latta's wealth are clear.
To have blue paint would be able to show your guests that you had any kind of wealth. There was faux finishings on the doors, which was interesting from the paint chip analysis, to show that they were not made from mahogany, but oftentimes they would faux the doors out to look like mahogany. So there again, it was to show a sense of wealth within the house. I think the romantic side of the plantation is fine goods. Because he was a merchant, he was able and had access to sugar, which would have been really rare. He would have had access to fine tea, which people would either have or wouldn't have depending on where they were located. Fine clothes, having things tailored for them. Living in a house, there was not just a cabin, but a house that had 2 floors. That's rare. To have windows would have been a sign of wealth. So that would have been the refined side of it. You would have had your own horse and carriage.
A local nonprofit oversees historic Latta Plantation today and manages the day-to-day operations at the site. They offer daily tours and programs for school groups. And Executive Director Anne Marie Riley says there's a lot to maintain in preserving history.
So we have 11 historic buildings on site total. Outside from the house, we have a reproduction kitchen. We do have a carriage barn, which is original. It was moved onto the property from Mecklenburg County to preserve that. We have the Alexander Hood cabin, and that was Ezekiel Alexander's cabin that was located on North Tryon Street originally, and they moved it here to preserve it.
Preservation of the buildings is an ongoing process. Riley runs down just what it takes with the main house.
It's important that we have a pest management system in place. A lot of people visit us all the time, which is great, but that also means that there's a lot of cleaning and dusting that we have to do as well to maintain the house.
When you visit historic Latta Plantation, it might be easy to get caught up in the romantic picture of the large house with its elegant rooms where the Lattas hosted parties to demonstrate their wealth and status. But Riley says her staff doesn't shy away from presenting the full story and the labor it took to upkeep a plantation in the South.
There was a darker side. Here on the plantation, like Like any plantations, if you own enslaved people, you're owning people. And we do talk about the life on the plantation and what that meant. We try to tell raw stories on the plantation here about who those people were, not just that they were enslaved, but who were they as people.
Today, there are 52 acres of the original Latta plantation remaining, but when James Latta called it home, he owned nearly 740 acres, and
He owned 34 slaves. 23 of them were over the age of 10, and 11 were under the age of 10.
Williams says Latta and many other farmers started out simple.
People grew wheat as a cash crop. They grew their own food crops. Animal crop that was the largest and most valuable was hogs.
Then the shift. Eli Whitney and his labor-saving cotton gin ushered in a new era across the American South.
The more cotton became a profitable crop, the more people invested in land and in slaves in order to keep their money coming in and keep it growing. Between 1820 and 1830, cotton became an enormously important, valuable crop. So these plantations, as they were developing into changing from farms into plantations, the wealth became a more important factor.
But even with the cotton gin, growing and harvesting the crop required strenuous labor. And like the colonial period when tobacco was the king cash crop, landowners built their empires on the backs of slave labor. So while the Lattas lived in this house, their slaves likely lived like this.
This would have been your typical enslaved cabin. It just wasn't about the Lattas. It was more than that. It was about the 34, 35 enslaved men, women, and children who had to endure life by toiling in the fields from sunup to sundown, 6 to 7 days out of the week, just so that the Lattas could live the lap of luxury. For James Latta, he had around 34 enslaved men, women, and children. He would have had around 3 enslaved cabins, so doing the math, between 10 to 15 enslaved living in this one-room cabin. Many cabins on a plantation, enslaved cabins, would have had one bed. Out of those 10 to 15, only one would have been given this bed.
Michael Webb works here at Latta as an interpreter. He doesn't sugarcoat the history.
For some, it's still hard to go into and delve into the topic. But in order to kind of smooth over that feeling or that way, you have to, educate yourself about what particularly happened to these individuals who were forced into this kind of labor, into chattel slavery. The enslaved were looked at as a value commodity. They were looked upon as nothing but farm animals. They were looked upon just like the farm animals here on the plantation. For James Latta, being that he had around 34 enslaved men, women, and children, this would be considered a medium-scale plantation. Any plantation with 75 or more would have been considered a large scale.
Webb makes it a point to share the names and stories of those who lived a life of forced servitude.
We have some of the documents about the individuals who once lived here, such as Suki, who was the house enslaved. She arrived here at the age of 12 in 1812. And when she arrived here, she was assigned to the house, so she had to do the cooking, cleaning, and laundry work, and she had to do various activities in and around the main house. By the time she was in her 20s, she became the full-time plantation cook.
Many of the enslaved were skilled craftsmen.
William Sample purchases the plantation in 1853. One of his artisan enslaved was Louis Pfeiffer. He was a noted stonemason who made a lot of the granite steps here at historic Latta Plantation. We own his granite chicken trough and it's housed in our museum. Hopewell Presbyterian Church, which is a mile and a half from the site, their granite steps were made by him. And in downtown Charlotte, First Presbyterian Church, their granite steps were also made by him as well.
Webb said it's difficult for many African Americans to document the family trees. In the era of slavery, the enslaved were dehumanized and records were loosely kept. But Webb has been able to trace his own roots, making his job here all the more personal.
My father always told me of where my enslaved ancestors come from. And his grandmother was born on Kiwi Heights Plantation, which was owned by the Calhouns. I just recently visited the plantation where she was born, and it was powerful to know where she was born and where she had to endure this life of servitude. It really resonated into me that, you know, what I do for a living, that I'm in the right field, and that it's time for not only me, but more people to tell their story.
And their story is an important part of historic Latta Plantation.
He's able to really convey that history in a really important but a very impactful way to visitors. And it's also about telling that two sides of the story, you know, as well. You know, he's able to really bring that history to life with characters that he has researched and he portrays.
It's always a gratifying opportunity for me to dress up like this, to be in an enslaved cabin like this, present school programs, house tours, only telling the story of the enslaved. Even in the house, I talk about Suki. I don't talk about the Lattas.
His passion makes him a powerful storyteller. He's committed to making history come to life, making sure it's not forgotten or glossed over. Visitors to Latta Plantation come from all over, including Sharia Green from Virginia.
And I thought it would be very interesting. I've never been to a plantation before. It was amazing to see the living quarters and then seeing the bedrooms upstairs, like there's no box spring, you know, they didn't have that. And the young lady was telling me one of the nursery rhymes that we used to sing, you know, don't let the sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite, like that was actually a real thing.
During special events, visitors like Green learn about history in the kitchen, where Susan Worcester is preparing food over an open fire using traditional receipts.
A receipt is a recipe. They were called receipts up until about the mid-1800s, early 1800s.
Now these green beans came
We are having green beans and ham hocks. We're making a ginger cake and a lemon sauce to go with it. We are making a mustard salad dressing and egg noodles. And I'll make a sauce for that.
She's honed her skills over the years.
I love doing the research, finding the ingredients. I like the way the food tastes. It's just real simple.
As part of the Historical Cooking Guild of the Catawba Valley, Worcester feels there's more to her cooking than just the food. There is history in the kitchen.
I know why I think it's important, so we can hand it down. So the generations that come along will know this is the way my grandmother used to eat, and this is some of the foods that they used to eat, and it doesn't need to come from a restaurant. Yeah, you can make really good food just going out in the garden.
Bringing history to life through reenactments, engaging interpreters, and tours offer a unique way for people to engage with the plantation's history. But those aren't the only ways.
Today I got here a little after 7. It varies. I try to keep the animals on the same routine.
Meet Ken Holmes.
I'm the farm manager here at Latta Plantation.
And he's got some mouths to feed.
All right, this is the food for the sheep and the pigs.
So he's making the rounds.
Oreo, you hold tight right where you're at, sweetheart.
About a dozen farm animals call the site home.
We have turkeys, a variety of chickens, belted Galloway cow, a 19-year-old mule, a 9-year-old donkey, a male and female guinea hog, and right now that's all the stock that we have. Oh, I forgot the sheep. What am I talking about?
These animals, and more specifically, the breeds of animals, represent what you might have found in the Carolina backcountry some 200 years ago, including the pigs.
And these are our guinea hogs. That is a breed that came over during the slave trade from the Guinea coast of West Africa. They're a real hardy breed, real durable. They can live on almost anything. They will eat anything. They're omnivores.
Then there's Lucille the cow.
She's 3.5 years old.
To some, she looks like a popular American cookie.
So I've worked with her since she was about 3 months old, and we pretty much have walked all the way around this place together.
She's a belted Galloway, a breed that originated in Scotland. Holmes says Lucille and the other animals add something special to the historic experience here.
They bring a life to the place, a character to the place, another dimension. The kids are always interested in the animals, and a lot of people have never been able to experience these kinds of animals up close, especially in a modern urban environment. Not many people get to see baby lambs and feel the wool, and not many people get to feel the ears on a mammoth jack or mammoth donkey. So it really does bring life to the site.
Holmes, a history buff with livestock experience, started volunteering at the plantation in 2002.
Yes, sheep.
Eventually, they hired him full-time to manage the farm.
But this was my first experience with sheep, with mules, with donkeys and horses, as far as actually caring for them and learning the ins and outs. Here you go, Maud.
And there's lots of ins and outs.
The majority of the hours are spent putting the animals through their routine, feeding them, pasturing them, depending on the event or what's going on at the site or the conditions of the site. They'll be moved to different pastures in different areas on the site. The remainder of the time is cleaning up from the previous hours that I was not here and preparing them for the hours once I leave at the end of the day and return the next morning. It is a stewardship that I take seriously. It's the little things that make the big differences in their health long term.
The summer of 2019 brought the birth of 3 new lambs.
Their names are Georgia, Little Girl, and Beverly.
And on this morning, they each needed a shot. And one thing that hasn't changed in 200+ years, no one likes a shot.
It'll be over before you know it.
Over time, he builds strong individual bonds with each animal.
Sometimes, just to be honest with you, I talk to them like I was talking to, my best friend.
In the case of the lambs,
all of the sheep that are here, I participated in pulling them from their mothers. It's so funny, I'll sit down and like when I get a new animal, I'll put them in the stall, and just for them to get used to me, I'll sit with them and just talk to them, and I will. I'll start with Genesis 1:1. And it's funny because I'll get to the 6th day and I'll say, hey, here's where you come in.
Over time, he gets to know each animal, and their sometimes unique personalities.
My most chill animal, it would have to be the mule. Good girl. Oh, you're a good girl. She is broken to draft or pulling a plow, and she loves to work. She doesn't seem to have much personality except when she's working. Of course, today, she doesn't want to go in the paddock. You want to stay out here and be a TV star.
At historic Latta Plantation, even the farm buildings are part of the story. They're either original to the site or have been saved from demolition elsewhere. But Holmes says the big challenge
is period fencing, getting the materials to build it appropriate to the period and making sure that it does secure the animals. The old saying on fences is they have to be bull strong, mule high, and hog tight. So that's the way we have to build the fences to keep all the animals in.
Operating a small farm might not seem like a lot of work, but it requires attention 365 days a year. Luckily for Holmes, there's help.
It is an insurmountable task for one person, so it is a big teamwork effort here. We have volunteers, interns, and other members of the staff chip in to help on this. This isn't my show. It's a joint effort.
The farm and the animals serve a purpose at historic Latta Plantation. They bring words out of the history books and present living, breathing examples of life in North Carolina's backcountry in the 19th century. At historic Latta Plantation, the enduring legacy is not the grand house on the hill, the slave cabins, the rustic kitchen, or even the animals. It's the stories of life at Latta we celebrate, honor, and remember. Those who labored in the cotton fields, embraced the realities of plantation life, but most importantly, we won't forget those days, and we will continue to share those stories.
We learn lessons from history. If we don't learn those lessons, you ultimately, repeat those problems. I think it's important to know where we come from it helps give us direction for where we want to go as a culture and as a society.
So take a stroll at historic Latta Plantation. Come see for yourself what it takes to preserve history and give meaning and context to life 200 years ago. It's all here in Charlotte's own backyard. Hear the story shared by passionate and dedicated interpreters. And yes, enjoy the animals on the farm who do their part to make all this even more real. But remember to take a moment to reflect and remember the lessons we learned from our own history. Until next time, thank you for joining us on A Trail of History.
A production of PBS Charlotte.